Hello historians, it is February 16th and today we are going to talk about one of the most interesting and famous Civil War generals. And then on Thursday we're going to talk about another very famous Civil War general. So today we're going to talk about a Union general. His name was William Tecumseh Sherman. And actually his early military career was nearly a disaster and he was relieved from command, but then he returned at the Battle of Shiloh and won a victory there, and then he would gather 100,000 Union troops with him and he would head for Atlanta, and he became known for saying, sorry, I'm outside. It's such a nice day today. I thought it'd be fun to just do outside. Unfortunately, I'm on my street and there are vehicles on the street, so I hope that's not distracting for you. What was I saying? Oh, a couple things he was credited with. One of them was the saying, war is hell. He was a general, but he never romanticized war in any way. And his other claim to fame is that he was one of the major architects or the major innovators of a war strategy called total war, which we'll talk more about that in a minute. Like I said, his name is William Tecumseh Sherman. His middle name, Tecumseh, is the name of a Shawnee Indian chief, and it's said that his father was a great admirer of Tecumseh, and that's how he got that middle name. Not sure if that's the 100% factual truth, but it's all the information that we have. So Sherman attended West Point, the United States Military Academy. He excelled academically, and he graduated 6th in his class. And then he would see his first Army action against Native Americans in Florida. And he had numerous other assignments throughout Georgia and South Carolina. And he actually became acquainted with many of the Old South's most wealthy and respected families. So during the Mexican-American War, Sherman actually ended up stationed in California as an executive officer of a base there. And so he wasn't getting any combat experience. So he felt like his Army career was a dead end, and he resigned. And he stayed in California and he worked as a banker during the gold rush. But then in 1857 there was an economic panic, and so he lost that job and he ended up going to Louisiana to become, in 1859, become the headmaster of a military academy. And while he was there, he told his friends who were all about secession and leaving the Union that if there was a war, it would be long and it would be bloody, and that the North would most likely win the war. So when Louisiana seceded from the Union, Sherman resigned and he moved to St. Louis. He didn't want to have anything to do with the war at all. He was a strong supporter of the Union, though. He did not believe that the South could possibly win this war, that they were not actually fighting for a righteous cause. So after the war began with the firing on Fort Sumter, he asked his brother, who was a U.S. Senator, John Sherman, to get him another commission in the Army. So in May 1867, Sherman was appointed a colonel in the 13th U.S. Infantry, and he was assigned a command under General William McDowell in Washington, D.C. He fought in the first battle of Bull Run, in which the Union troops were defeated, and so then he ended up back at a desk job in Kentucky, and at that point he was actually put on leave and labeled unfit for duty. The press picked up on his troubles and they described him as being insane, but it's believed that actually that Sherman fell into a state of depression or had some kind of mental breakdown. We're not 100% sure, but from the writings of that time, those are what historians have presumed. So in May 1867, Sherman, I already said that part. Sorry. So he goes back into the war, assigned to provide logistical support for General Grant, Ulysses S. Grant, at the capture of Fort Donelson in 1862. I think I said in May of 1867 he joined the inventory, but that was supposed to be 1861. Now it's 1862. I know I don't ask you to remember the dates, but we do need to remember the order that things happen. Okay, so he's assigned to serve with General Grant in the Army of West Tennessee. And his first test as a commander comes at Shiloh, the Battle of Shiloh. The morning of April 6, 1862, the Confederates launched a surprise attack. And Sherman and Grant had to rally their troops and push back the rebels, and they managed to do that by the end of the day. They had reinforcements arriving that night, and Union troops were able to launch a counterattack the next morning, and the Confederate troops scattered. And that experience at Shiloh bonded General Sherman and General Grant, although he's only Colonel Sherman at that point, and Grant. They became lifelong friends. They exchanged letters through their whole entire lives. So Sherman remained in the West, serving with Grant in the campaign, the siege against Vicksburg, which was a long campaign. And the press were just so negative about both of them. They were relentless in their reporting. They complained that the army was being ruined by these two mud turtles. And that Grant was a drunkard and his confidential advisor was a lunatic. But eventually they won victory when Vicksburg fell, and Sherman was given command of 3 armies in the West. So in February of 1864, Sherman launched, move this, my little stand here. Sherman, I'm going to move my whole setup. Tangled up here. There we go. Sherman launched a campaign from Vicksburg, Mississippi to destroy a rail line and a rail center and clear out Confederate troops from central Mississippi. The time was of essence at this point because a battle was expected soon from the Confederate army. So Sherman's army cut supply lines from Vicksburg and lived off the land, just foraging off the land as they marched. And the Confederates with 10,000 troops were no match for 45,000 Union troops, obviously. So on February 11th, 1864, Sherman's army attacked and destroyed the railroad center, which was his goal, and they then dispersed in 4 different detachments in 4 directions. They were destroying railroad tracks, bridges, trestles, any train equipment along the way. And this is the prelude to what becomes known as Sherman's March to the Sea in Georgia. And it's an important milestone for a new strategy that's going to evolve during the Civil War, and it's called total war. And it was definitely something that Sherman believed in. And total war is basically you destroy everything. You don't even leave anything with the civilians that they can use to help the army. So you don't leave their crops intact. You don't leave their farm animals intact. In many cases, you don't even leave their homes intact. So they cannot serve as places of rest or as hospitals for the enemy troops. So total war is a controversial idea, although it is often used to win a war, to basically eliminate the enemy's ability to fight. And that's what's going on. So they've eliminated all the abilities of the railroads to function in this part of the South in Georgia. And now they're eliminating food. I mean, they always say an army marches on its stomach. So Sherman wants to see to it that they have as little food available to them. And the whole goal is to push the South to a point of desperation that they will surrender. It was known in the South, a lot of people in the South would call the war the cause. They were fighting for the cause, and the Southerners have in their mind, they have a great cause to fight for. They're fighting for their way of life, they're fighting for their homes and families, and so they are very motivated to not surrender. And so it's decided that Sherman will go to Atlanta. He will destroy as much of Atlanta as he can, and then he will march across Georgia to the port of Savannah at the sea. So he's going to march to the sea across the state of Georgia. And he followed a scorched earth policy, is what they call it. He destroyed military targets, industry, all infrastructure, and all civilian property. They would take all the pigs and chickens, they would slaughter the sheep and the cows, anything they couldn't carry, they destroyed. They are disrupting the Confederate economy and their transportation networks. And this operation really broke the back of the Confederacy and helped lead to its eventual surrender. Sherman's decision to operate deep within enemy territory and have no established supply lines is considered to be one of the major pivotal campaigns of the Civil War. And historians consider it one of the earliest examples of this strategy of total war. Now, Sherman obviously was vilified even to this day in the South. You know, he was a demon. He perpetuated atrocities on civilians. But historians who don't have that kind of lost cause mentality, they see Sherman for what he was, which is a brilliant military strategist, a brilliant tactician. I have a hard time with that word. His tactics were so effective in making war on the enemy, and he really changed the nature of war, and he recognized it when he said war is hell. And the way this total war was waged made it hell, not just for soldiers but for civilians. And so when Grant became the president in 1869, when he was elected, Sherman was given general command over the entire U.S. Army. So that's your general profile for the day. On Thursday, we'll have a profile of Thomas Jonathan Jackson, also known as General Stonewall Jackson. So there is a classwork activity that is attached to the email that you received this video on, so make sure you do that. And I will see you on Thursday. Bye for now.